Have you ever wondered what mysteries lie hidden beneath the ocean's surface? Imagine exploring the dark, twisting caves beneath the waves, where every turn could lead to either an amazing discovery or a dangerous trap. On December 23, 1984, a group of 6 brave divers set out to explore the Blowhole Cave off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. But when one diver suddenly disappears, the adventure takes a terrifying turn. What happened deep inside that cave? How did a simple dive become a race against time? Join us as we uncover the chilling events that unfolded beneath the surface, where the ocean's beauty hides its darkest secrets. Blowhole Cave is a fascinating rock formation located on the island of Oahu, Hawaii, near Hanauma Bay at Halona Point. The name Halona comes from the Hawaiian word meaning lookout, which is fitting for the stunning views of the Pacific Ocean that the site offers. This natural wonder is a popular spot for tourists who visit to witness the spectacular blowhole in action, enjoy the nearby beach, and occasionally spot humpback whales or Hawaiian green sea turtles, known as honu, during the winter months. However, the real attraction of this area is the blowhole, which shoots sea spray high into the air, mimicking a geyser. The formation of the Blowhole Cave began thousands of years ago during a period of intense volcanic activity in Oahu. Lava from Koko Crater flowed into the ocean, creating intricate tunnels and tubes beneath the surface. These lava tubes extend deep into the ocean, narrowing as they rise toward the surface. When the tide is high and the winds are strong, waves crash into the shore, sending water into the narrow openings of the rock. This pressure builds up, forcing the water and air out through the blowhole, creating a spectacular burst of sea spray that can shoot up to 30 feet into the air. The best time to witness the blowhole at its most active is during high tide, when the ocean's force is strong. The sound of the water being forced through the narrow lava tubes can be quite dramatic, echoing through the area like thunder. On particularly windy days, the spray is even more impressive, making the Blowhole Cave a must-see destination for anyone visiting Oahu. Blowhole Cave is not just about the blowhole itself, though. The area around it offers much to explore. Halona Cave, known locally as Cockroach Cave, is a small, sandy beach nestled close to the blowhole. This cove is a favorite spot for both tourists and locals, especially when the surf is calm, making it ideal for swimming and relaxing. The cove's crystal-clear waters and picturesque surroundings make it a perfect place to unwind after witnessing the natural spectacle of the blowhole. Just next to Halona Cave lies a reef covered in Sinularia leather coral, creating a vibrant underwater ecosystem. The reef is home to various marine life, including echinoderms, colorful slugs, eels, and different species of coral. The presence of such rich biodiversity makes this area a paradise for snorkeling and diving enthusiasts who want to explore the underwater world and witness the beauty of Hawaiian marine life up close. For cave explorers, Blowhole Cave presents a unique adventure. Although it is not a traditional cave in the sense of dark, enclosed spaces, the lava tubes that extend into the ocean offer a thrilling exploration experience. These tubes are the result of ancient volcanic activity, where molten lava flowed toward the sea, cooling and solidifying to form intricate tunnels beneath the surface. Now, while some of these lava tubes are submerged, others remain accessible, providing explorers with the chance to investigate these ancient pathways carved by nature. Cave exploration in this area requires careful planning and preparation. The ocean currents near the blowhole can be strong, and the terrain around the cave is rugged and slippery due to the constant presence of sea spray. Explorers need to be cautious and well prepared, ensuring that they have the right equipment and knowledge of the tides. The narrow passages of the lava tubes, combined with the force of the waves, can make exploration challenging but also incredibly rewarding for those looking for a unique adventure. Moreover, Blowhole Cave holds cultural significance for the Hawaiian people. The entire area of Halona Point has deep ties to Hawaiian history and mythology. For generations, locals have considered this place sacred, a reminder of the island's volcanic origins and the raw power of nature. The blowhole itself serves as a powerful symbol of the ocean's strength, and many visitors come not just to see the natural wonder, but to experience the connection to the land and sea that the area represents. Blowhole Cave is more than just a tourist spot. It is a place where natural beauty, adventure, and cultural history all come together. Whether you're there to witness the Blowhole's spectacular display, relax on the sandy shores of Halona Cave, or explore the lava tubes beneath the surface, Blowhole Cave offers something for everyone. It's a must-see destination for anyone visiting Oahu, and for cave explorers, it presents a unique and thrilling challenge that is sure to leave a lasting impression. Cave diving is a dangerous but exhilarating activity. The divers had spent months preparing for this particular dive. They trained rigorously, ensuring their scuba gear was in top condition, practicing their breathing techniques, and learning to navigate the dark, narrow passages of underwater caves. In the cold morning of December 23, 1984, a group of 6 divers set out on what was meant to be an exciting underwater adventure near the Blowhole on the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. These divers, including Sue Turner, a 21-year-old thrill-seeker, were drawn to the area by the promise of exploring the mysterious caves hidden beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. For them, cave diving wasn't just a sport. It was a way to escape the ordinary and experience the untamed beauty of nature in a way that few others could. The allure of the ocean's depths, the excitement of venturing into uncharted territories, and the challenge of pushing their limits drove these divers to the Blowhole Cave that day. Sue Turner, the youngest of the group, had only recently developed a love for diving. She had been diving for a little over a year, and had already built a reputation for her adventurous spirit. Although still gaining experience, she was confident, eager, and perhaps a little overzealous. Like many cave divers, Sue was drawn to the thrill of the unknown. The caves near the Blowhole were famous for their treacherous conditions, with their narrow passages and strong currents, making them suitable only for experienced divers. Well, despite the risks, the group, including Sue, was excited to explore the area. On the morning of December 23rd, the group gathered their equipment and began discussing their plan for the day. They were aware of the potential hazards of the Blowhole Cave, having heard stories of the dangers that lurk below the surface. But they were confident in their skills and excited to begin their dive. They checked their scuba tanks, regulators, buoyancy vests, and weight belts, ensuring that everything was in perfect working order. Excitement filled the air as they set out to explore the caves that had captured their imaginations. As they descended into the water, the beauty of the underwater world unfolded before them. The water was clear, revealing the vibrant coral reefs and marine life that called the area home. The group swam together, communicating through hand signals as they went deeper into the caves. The caves themselves were awe-inspiring, with narrow tunnels leading into larger chambers. The thrill of discovery kept the divers focused, but they were always mindful of the risks that came with cave diving. Sue, however, seemed particularly taken by the experience. As the group explored deeper into the cave system, she began to stray from the others. Perhaps it was the excitement of the moment, or perhaps it was a simple mistake, but Sue soon found herself separated from her companions. The strong currents near the Blowhole Cave made it difficult for her to return to the group, and she was swept further into the cave. As the minutes passed, the group realized that Sue was missing. Panic began to set in as they searched the nearby area, signaling to each other in a desperate attempt to locate her. They knew that time was of the essence, and the dangers of the cave became more apparent with each passing second. The strong currents and narrow passages made it difficult to navigate, and they feared that Sue had ventured too far into the cave to return safely. After what felt like a very long time, the group came up to the surface and called for help. A search was immediately launched, involving local authorities, the Coast Guard, and a helicopter crew. The search area was vast, with cliffs and underwater caves making the rescue mission even more challenging. The helicopter crew began scanning the waters below, hoping to find any sign of Sue. At 3:30 p.m., their search paid off. Sue's scuba tank, regulator, and buoyancy vest were found floating off the cliffs below the Makapu Lighthouse, about half a mile from where she had last been seen. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Why had Sue discarded her equipment? Why was her gear so far from where she had been diving with her group? The discovery was troubling, and the rescue team knew that time was running out. About 2 hours later, Sue's body was discovered 60 feet below the surface, resting on a ledge within the cave. Her lifeless form was a testament of the dangers that cave diving posed. Shockingly, Sue was still wearing her weight belt when she was found. For divers, the weight belt is one of the first pieces of equipment to be thrown away in an emergency, as it helps the diver to rise quickly to the surface. The fact that Sue still had her weight belt on led to questions about what had really happened. Some wondered if there had been foul play involved, while others believed that Sue had become disoriented and panicked in the strong currents, leading her to make fatal decisions. The recovery of Sue's body was a difficult and emotional process for all involved. The rescue team worked tirelessly to bring her remains to the surface, carefully navigating the treacherous cave system. The other divers in the group were left devastated by the loss of their friend and companion. For them, the excitement of the dive had turned into a nightmare, one that would leave them with lasting scars. After all this incident was over, questions and doubts still remained as to what had happened below the surface. What had caused Sue to become separated from the group in the first place? Had she made a wrong turn, or had the strong current simply swept her away? Why had she discarded some of her equipment but not her weight belt? The divers who were with her that day were left with the painful memory of losing a friend in such a tragic and unexpected way. Cave diving is a sport that requires skill, experience, and caution. While it offers the thrill of exploring unseen places, it also comes with inherent dangers. The incident involving Sue Turner serves as a sobering reminder of the risks that come with underwater cave exploration. Even the most prepared and experienced divers can find themselves in life-threatening situations when exploring the depths of the ocean. Sue's tragic death also started discussions in the diving community about the importance of safety rules. Divers were reminded of the importance of staying together as a group, talking clearly, and always having a plan for emergencies. The recovery of Sue's body also raised awareness about the dangers of the Blowhole Cave and its surrounding areas, leading authorities to warn divers about the risks of exploring the caves. For Sue Turner, what began as an exciting dive into the unknown ended in tragedy. Her story is one of both the thrill and the danger that comes with cave diving. Sue loved to explore and have adventures. That's why she went to Blowhole Cave that day. Unfortunately, her life was tragically cut short. But her spirit of adventure and curiosity continues to inspire those who hear her story. Cave diving, like all extreme sports, has risks and uncertainties. For those who dare to explore, the excitement of discovery is often mixed with the understanding that the ocean can be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. As we reach the end of this tragic tale, it is clear that the ocean's depths, though mesmerizing and full of wonder, are not without their dangers. Cave diving, with its promise of discovery, can quickly turn into a deadly challenge if respect for the environment is lost. Sue's passion for exploration led her into the unknown, but the price she paid serves as a stark warning to all who seek the thrill of diving into these mysterious waters. So the next time you hear the roar of the ocean or feel the pull of adventure, remember this story. Stay safe, stay alert, and always respect the mysteries that lie beneath the waves. Dive deep, but never forget the risks that come with the beauty of the unknown. Thank you for watching and following Sue Turner's incredible yet tragic journey into the depths of the Blowhole Cave. Stevens Gap is one of the most beautiful caves in the world. Its massive pit, with an almost biblical beam of sunlight cascading from above, is tailor-made for Hollywood movies. The entrance to the pit is supposedly one of the most photographed in North America, and it's easy to see why. But despite its apparent serenity, Stevens Gap is also known for devouring explorers alive, and recently, the gap has claimed more lives than usual. Stevens Gap is located in Jackson County, Alabama, about 30 miles east of the state's most populous city, Huntsville. It's fairly easy to reach by car. If you're traveling from Huntsville, the drive will only take you about a half hour. The entrance to the Stevens Gap Callahan Cave Preserve is only a little ways off the freeway, making it much more accessible than other similar caves around the world. While it's easy to travel there, actually getting into the cave is more complicated. In order to visit Stevens Gap, you're required by law to get a permit. The preserve is privately owned, and Stevens Gap is protected by the Southeastern Cave Conservancy, the largest land conservancy in the world dedicated entirely to protecting caves. This sounds intimidating, but aside from the mild inconvenience, these permits are probably fairly easy to get. One of the unique things about Stevens Gap is that you don't have to be an experienced cave diver to go inside it. In fact, it is possible to walk into the main pit with no more equipment than some decent hiking boots. Some visitors have even been able to camp inside the cave, although other sources give the impression this has either never been allowed or is not allowed anymore. Most people seem to agree the permits are a good thing, as they help regulate the influx of visitors and preserve the cave. Even with the permit requirement, the cave is still a very popular spot, with applicants needing to reserve their time slot around 2 to 3 weeks in advance. It's safe to assume the majority of visitors to Stevens Gap do so on foot. However, there is a smaller subset of more daring visitors who opt to rappel down. Doing this can be both visually stunning and adrenaline pumping. From the opening in the ceiling, measured from the edge of the hole, the bottom of the pit is a whopping 143 feet directly below. This large vertical passageway, which is often described as the keyhole, is quite wide and roughly cylindrical in shape. This is the spot from which sunlight pours into the underground cavern, and it is arguably one of the main features that makes this such a popular spot for photographers. To descend mid-air along this ray of sunlight is nothing short of a caving enthusiast's dream, but it is not for those who don't have proper equipment or lots of prior experience. Frighteningly, even when you're experienced and you bring all the necessary gear with you, things can still go wrong. At Stevens Gap, when they go wrong, they go really wrong. And in 2019, more than one unfortunate visitor met their demise at the bottom of Stevens Gap. The first life to be claimed by Stevens Gap was that of Juan Gerardo Cruces. Juan was from Madison, a small city on the opposite side of Huntsville from Stevens Gap. Juan was born in November 1994, so in the spring of 2019, he was just 24 years old. According to reports, Juan left his home on Thursday, April 11th to go hiking by himself. All that was apparently known by friends and family at the time was that he was planning to hike in Jackson County. It's possible that Juan himself wasn't sure where exactly he wanted to hike. After all, traveling alone leaves ample room for spontaneity. Although we don't know for sure, it seems likely that going off to spend the day alone hiking was not unusual for Juan, as there are no reports that his family was worried about him, at least not at first. However, when Juan never came back that evening, his family filed a missing persons report. The following day, which was Friday, April 12th, the Jackson County Police began an investigation into the whereabouts of Juan Gerardo Cruces. Knowing that Juan was out hiking probably helped to narrow the search right from the beginning, but the police still had a fairly large range of possible places to look. Jackson County is well over 1,000 square miles, and there are numerous areas full of hiking trails. After some time, Jackson County Police came across Juan Gerardo Cruces' car in the place they were probably least hoping to find it, the parking lot at Stevens Gap Callahan Cave Preserve. This must have sent a chill down the spines of the officers. Stevens Gap is a well-known landmark in the area, and not at all a place you want to have to look for a missing person. Fearing the worst, Jackson County Police quickly notified the Scottsboro-Jackson County Rescue Squad, who came to help search the area. They searched all over the park, the trails, and even in some parts of the cave. However, due to the obvious need for highly specialized equipment, the crew wasn't able to fully search the cave. Even though they hadn't found any trace of Juan Gerardo Cruces, the crew knew they needed to make absolutely sure that every inch of the cave had been thoroughly covered. Before leaving to continue the search elsewhere, they called the Huntsville Cave Rescue Unit. As their title suggests, this unit showed up with all the necessary equipment and expertise to descend into Stevens Gap and conduct a total search of the infamous keyhole. Sadly, against the hopes of everyone on the scene, it was at this point that the body of Juan Gerardo Cruces was found. He had fallen all the way down the 143 feet keyhole to a horrific death at the very bottom. We have only a couple clues as to the state of Juan's body upon discovery. The first is that Jackson County Sheriff Chuck Phillips was able to identify the body as being that of Juan. Considering the kind of damage one can imagine a fall like this causing, this is frankly amazing, although we don't exactly how Sheriff Phillips was able to make the identification. The second is that officials choose not to order an autopsy, so while Juan Gerardo Cruces was still recognizable, the fact that he had fallen and been killed was so obvious to those at the scene that they felt no need to investigate any further. Even if the cause of death, in the most immediate sense, was crystal clear, there are still many questions that should have been raised. Why was a hiker going anywhere near the opening to Stevens Gap in the first place? As I mentioned earlier, Stevens Gap is unique in that there is a walkable path to get inside the cave from another entry point. How is that nobody saw or heard anything? This is a popular cave. Visitors come and go every day, and some apparently even camp overnight. A person falling down the 143 feet keyhole and landing at the bottom seems like just about the most noticeable thing that could possibly happen inside Stephen's Gap. And yet, there are no witnesses. Was the cave empty? Did Juan fall in the middle of the night? Why was he there in the middle of the night? Another question, which is sure to at least cross the mind of anyone who hears this story, is that of whether Juan fell or jumped. I can't speculate on this because I didn't know Juan and haven't spoken to anyone from his family or friend group. However, I can tell you that, assuming they were doing their jobs diligently, Jackson County Police would have absolutely considered this possibility and pursued it, and they ruled Juan's death an accident. Even then, there's still a sense that not every question has been answered with this story. How did Juan accidentally fall into one of the most famous landmarks in the county, especially if he was an experienced hiker who was familiar with the nature in the area? In the end, Juan tragically took most of the answers to the bottom of Stephen's Gap with him. Juan Gerardo Cruces would not turn out to be the only person claimed by Stephen's Gap in 2019. Just a few months later, a young man named Philip Whitehead was visiting Jackson County on vacation. Whitehead was from Florida. He was also serving in the military at the time and was stationed at Fort Campbell, which is about 3 hours north of Jackson County. One of the items on Whitehead's itinerary was visiting Stephen's Cave with one of his friends. Being an adventure-seeking young man, Whitehead wanted to try rappelling down the infamous keyhole. It's not clear what level of experience he had with rappelling, although his being in the military probably increases the likelihood that he had some experience, and certainly increases the likelihood that he was at least in good overall physical condition. His friend, however, was definitely experienced with rappelling. In fact, multiple reports say that his friend had actually rappelled down Stephen's Gap more than once before. Going to the cave, the two brought plenty of equipment. I would also assume that they acquired the necessary permits, although we don't know this for sure, and, as we'll see later, we have at least some reason to doubt it. This descent started out like any other. The two harnessed themselves in, checked, double-checked, gave themselves the green light, and stepped over the edge. I doubt they went at the same time, even though it is possible they did. Given that they probably didn't, I would guess that Philip Whitehead went first. It would make some sense, as his more experienced friend could provide more guidance in the very beginning of his descent if he needed it. But the main reason I'm guessing this is because Philip's friend is still alive. Disaster struck Philip at some point as he was making his long and spacious descent through the sunlit vertical tunnel. Multiple reports, which one assumes rely on the testimony of Philip's friend and maybe other witnesses as well, state that a loud pop was heard. Officials would later speculate that this pop could have been the sound of the rope snapping, or the breaking of the metal carabiner which attached Philip to the rope. Either way, it was quite literally the worst thing that could have happened. Philip's gradual descent was immediately transformed into a total freefall. Even more tragically, his friend was powerless to help as he watched his friend plummet to his inevitable death. Once again, the Huntsville Cave Rescue Unit was called to duty. They were able to recover the lifeless body of Philip Whitehead, who became the second young man in just a few months to have his life tragically cut short at Stephen's Gap. This was enough to inspire a significant public effort on the part of local officials to try and educate the public and encourage safer behavior. Brian Bailey, the chief of operations for the Huntsville Cave Rescue Unit, made the following public statement shortly after Philip Whitehead's death. If you plan on visiting the site, go to the Southeastern Cave Conservancy website and get a permit. Stay on the marked trails and stay away from the edge of the pit. Use good common sense. This statement seems to imply that neither Philip Whitehead nor Juan Gerardo Cruces had permits, and that neither one of them was using good common sense. But is that true? Juan Gerardo Cruces most likely wasn't planning on entering Stephen's Gap at all, so the issue of whether or not he had a permit is irrelevant. The opinion of those who worked the case and the available information all seem to suggest that his death was an accident, which could very well have been prevented being more careful, as Bailey suggests. But somehow that doesn't seem like a satisfactory solution. The fact that Juan, a young, fit 24-year-old, accidentally fell down one of the largest and most well-known keyholes in the country is quite odd, and we don't really know how it happened, because as far as we know, no one was there to witness it. As for Philip Whitehead, we have no reason to doubt that he and his friend both acquired the necessary permits, other than Brian Bailey seemingly implying that they didn't, and that if they had, somehow that would have prevented the tragedy. Whitehead was a young military man who brought an experienced friend and the necessary equipment. It would be strange if, despite all this thoughtful preparation, they both somehow neglected the legally required permits that one would assume they'd have to sneak into the preserve without. I think the truth is that Brian Bailey, the Huntsville Cave Rescue Unit, and other officials simply don't know what else to do. Encouraging the public to be careful and to make sure they follow all the rules seem like natural reactions to these two successive events, but neither suggestion really addresses anything that either of the victims did wrong. The much darker reality that perhaps no one wants to address is that disasters like these can simply happen without warning. Competent, responsible people who know what they're doing and have done it before can still fall prey to the very thing their experience and precaution are supposed to prevent. All it takes is one slip, one snapped rope, one step too far in the wrong direction. Two cavers set out on a thrilling adventure inside Bowden Cave, West Virginia. As they ventured deep underground, the unexpected happened. Floodwaters from melting snow began rising, turning the cave's narrow passages into treacherous, raging streams. Trapped in the heart of the cave with no clear escape, they faced the terrifying forces of nature. Would they find their way out, or would the cave claim them forever? Their fate remained uncertain. Bowden Cave, located in Randolph County, West Virginia, is a fascinating cave with both private and forest-owned land entrances. Now, while the Monongahela National Forest marks cave entrances on its land as closed, it is difficult to manage access to caves like Bowden because the main entrance is privately owned and easily accessible. This entrance, after a short crawl up over a rock face, leads into the cave's passageways. At one time, the section was gated, but now only a few pipes remain, leaving the cave open to visitors. Most of Bowden Cave has passages that you can walk through, although some areas lead to tunnels with flowing water. As you explore, the cave may feel both familiar and new. Even if you have visited it before, the dim light and changing features make every trip feel like a new experience. You will not see more wildlife creatures in this cave, only a few bats and some orange salamander-like creatures near the entrances. One of the most interesting places inside Bowden Cave is the shower room. Here, an old wooden ladder leads up to a tall sinkhole in the ceiling where water always drips down, making it feel like a shower. It's easy to see how this room got its name. In the past, a glow stick was placed high up on the wall, almost at the top, but it has since fallen or been taken away, showing how difficult it must have been to reach that height. The exploration continues back to the water tunnel, a spade-shaped passage where water constantly flows. Now, while mostly walkable, sections of the tunnel require crawling, and there are deep holes that can easily trap a leg if you're not careful. Though this tunnel ends at a gate, preventing a thorough trip, it still offers an exciting challenge for those determined to explore every inch of Bowden Cave. On Sunday, February 24th, 1985, two eager cavers, Scott Stanzel and Lou Martino, set off for a day of adventure at Bowden Cave in Randolph County, West Virginia. The day seemed perfect for an exploration, with unseasonably warm temperatures reaching 70 degrees. The snow that had recently covered the area was now melting quickly, causing local streams to swell with rushing water. But for Stanzel and Martino, the excitement of adventure was more important than any worry about the dangers ahead. They were determined to explore every part of the cave, using their past visits and knowledge that they had learned from a book about West Virginia caves. They had visited the cave before, but they knew that the cave could be different each time they went. The water levels could change, and new passages might be discovered. They were excited to see what they would find this time. Stanzel and Martino were experienced cavers. They had all the necessary equipment, including helmets, headlamps, and ropes. They also had a plan in case of an emergency. Despite the risks, Stanzel and Martino were determined to explore the cave. They were confident that they would be able to do so safely. They were excited to see what adventures awaited them in the depths of the Bowden Cave. So, with their gear and excitement, the two cavers entered Bowden Cave, not knowing how much the flooding would change the conditions underground. The cave system, shaped over many years by flowing water, was now actively carrying the melted snow. Inside, they found a rushing stream that filled much of the passage. As they moved upstream for about 300 feet, the conditions became more difficult. The narrow corridor, only 6 feet high and 3 feet wide, was filled with 3 feet of rushing water. Well, despite the dangerous conditions, they continued, their desire for exploration driving them deeper into the cave. Stanzel and Martino were experienced cavers, but they had never experienced a cave in such challenging conditions. They were also concerned about the possibility of getting stuck in the narrow passage. After swimming through the cold stream, they reached a drier part of the cave where they took a break to warm up. Their hands and feet were cold, but they were excited to be in one of West Virginia's most famous caves. After resting, they decided to find the second of Bowden Cave's 3 entrances. Although they had been inside the cave before, they mostly knew the layout from a book they had read. What they didn't know was that the second entrance had collapsed the year before, making it impossible to find. For the next 2.5 hours, they walked through the maze of passages, looking for the hidden second entrance. The excitement of exploring the unknown kept them going, but deep down, they started to feel worried. The cave's twisting passages seemed more confusing than they had remembered, and the sound of water reminded them of the flooding outside. As time passed, they realized that they did not know the cave as well as they thought. Meanwhile, outside the cave, their parked van had caught the attention of 3 cavers from the Parkersburg Grotto, a local caving group. The group, experienced in exploring West Virginia's caves, noticed the vehicle and became concerned when they realized that it belonged to cavers who hadn't been seen for hours. It was now 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the Parkersburg cavers decided to check out the situation. The Parkersburg team entered the cave through the main entrance, carefully navigating the increasingly dangerous conditions. As they made their way to the narrow stream passage, they spotted something alarming: a camera floating in the water. It was clear that Stanzel and Martino had ventured beyond this point, and the stream had since risen to a treacherous 5 feet deep. Realizing that their fellow cavers were likely trapped deeper in the cave, the rescue team made the difficult decision to exit the cave and try a different way. Knowing that the second entrance had collapsed, they aimed for Bowden Cave's 3rd entrance, which offered the best chance of reaching Stanzel and Martino. However, to get there, they would have to make several crossings of Bickle Run, a stream that was now dangerously swollen from the melting snow. The crossings were difficult, with the icy water hitting their legs and sapping their energy. But they pushed through, determined to rescue the missing cavers. Once inside the 3rd entrance, the rescue team made their way to one of the largest rooms in the cave, a cavernous space that echoed with the sound of dripping water. It was here, in this dark room, that they found Stanzel and Martino. The 2 explorers had realized that trying to go back through the stream passage was too dangerous, and were preparing to face the challenge. They were cold, tired, and unsure of how they would navigate the dangerous water ahead, but they had not lost hope. Stanzel and Martino felt relieved when they saw the rescue team approach. The Parkersburg cavers quickly checked out the situation and led Stanzel and Martino out of the cave, going back the way they had came through the 3rd entrance. The return trip was not any easier than before. Crossing Bickle Run again was very difficult, with the freezing water and slippery rocks threatening to pull them under at any moment. One of the rescuers, having been in the cold water for a long time, started to show signs of hypothermia. Despite the challenges, they all made it out safely, though the experience left a mark on everyone involved. Stanzel and Martino were grateful for the swift actions of the Parkersburg Grotto team, who had risked their own safety to help. It was a harsh reminder of how unpredictable and dangerous caving could be, especially in flood conditions. Looking back, it was clear that Stanzel and Martino were excited explorers, but they did not think about the risks enough. Their preparation, mostly based on a book, did not consider the possibility of flooding, and their lack of recent knowledge about the cave's condition made them vulnerable. They were lucky to have met experienced cavers who could navigate the cave's complex passages and dangerous conditions to bring them out safely. The near disaster at Bowden Cave serves as a strong reminder of how quickly a fun adventure can turn dangerous. Scott Stanzel and Lou Martino entered the cave excited to explore, but they didn't anticipate the serious risks caused by melting snow. Warm weather had raised the water levels inside the cave, turning small streams into powerful currents. They soon found themselves trapped, cold, and at risk of drowning. Their knowledge of the cave, based on an outdated book, left them unaware that the second entrance they were looking for had collapsed the year before. Thankfully, 3 cavers from the Parkersburg Grotto spotted their van and decided to check on the situation. After entering the cave, they found the passage filled with rushing water and realized the danger that Stanzel and Martino were in. By going around to a third entrance, they were able to locate the two trapped men and lead them out safely. Despite the successful rescue, one of the rescuers had to be treated for hypothermia due to the freezing water. This incident shows how important it is to be fully prepared before entering any cave. Cavers should always check for recent information about the cave, as conditions can change over time. Understanding how weather, especially rain or melting snow, can impact caves is also critical. Proper equipment like ropes, waterproof clothing, and emergency supplies should always be carried. Exploring caves in larger, well-prepared groups can also make a huge difference when things go wrong. To prevent accidents like this, it is essential to have updated knowledge, plan for emergencies, and avoid risky weather conditions. Caving is thrilling, but safety must always come first to ensure that adventures don't turn into life-threatening situations. Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is one of the world's best-known vacation destinations. It is unfortunately also a place where tourists sometimes die in unexpected and shocking ways. One such tourist was Dmitry Chernov. Chernov visited the coastal city of Cancun in August of 2017, but to the dismay of his friends and family back home in Russia, Chernov never returned. This is the terrifying and tragic story of how Dmitry Chernov met his demise while swimming inside a cenote, one of Mexico's most unusual and stunning natural features. Dmitry Chernov was 31 years old when he arrived in the state of Quintana Roo on Mexico's eastern coast. Chernov is something of a mysterious figure. Other than the fact that in August of 2019 he was 31 years of age, and the fact that he was a temporary resident of Quintana Roo at the time, not much has been made public. What brought him all the way to Mexico, some 10,000 plus kilometers away from his home country of Russia, is ultimately unknown. However, what may have drawn Chernov could have at least in part been a love of the outdoors. He chose to travel to an extremely beautiful location, famous for its beaches and tropical rainforests. Another very distinctive feature of the Yucatan Peninsula's topography is its assortment of cenotes. Cenotes are large underground chambers whose ceilings have collapsed, thus giving the appearance of a huge vertical cave. These vertical caves, almost like holes punched into the surface of the earth, are scattered throughout the Yucatan Peninsula. Some estimates put the number as high as 7,000 or more. In addition to being enormously wide, deep, and full of beautiful fauna, cenotes usually also have fresh water inside them, making them popular swimming destinations. This also makes them dangerous, especially for tourists and others not familiar with the area, such as Dmitry Chernov. On August 5, 2019, Chernov and a friend traveled to a cenote in Quintana Roo called L'Um Balam. L'Um Balam was located inside a biopark where private tours were often conducted. The cenote is well known for having particularly crystal clear water, but this can be deceptive. The underwater space below the surface is nothing short of cavernous and connects to one of the largest underground cave systems in the world. It doesn't matter if you're Michael Phelps or David Blaine, you cannot swim fast enough or hold your breath long enough to even begin exploring the extent of what's below the surface. It is possible that Dmitry Chernov didn't realize this, or it's possible he simply made a fatal miscalculation. Either way, what happened on that day, August 5th, would cast a dark shadow over the biopark that would end up never truly going away. Around 3 p.m. that afternoon, Chernov and his friend entered the cool, clear waters of the L'Um Balam cenote. However, as investigators would later determine, Chernov ended up unknowingly deviating from the approved swimming area within a matter of seconds. That's because a channel that was supposed to have been blocked off for safety reasons simply wasn't. There were two really good reasons why this area of the cenote was supposed to be closed off. The first was that it was dark. Sunlight naturally pours in from the main opening of the cenote, but only covers the areas directly below. You don't have to travel too far astray to find yourself in stark darkness, because after all, you are in fact dozens of feet underground. The second reason the area should have been closed off was that it went very far into this rapidly increasing darkness and very, very deep underwater. But if that wasn't dangerous enough, there was arguably a third reason why the area should have been blocked off, and that was to keep thrill-seeking swimmers away from one highly tempting feature of this particular cenote. This also happens to be the only factor that we can be reasonably sure Dmitry Chernov was aware of prior to entering the cenote. Almost mythologically, visitors spoke of an air bell, meaning a chamber with breathable air deep inside this forbidden section of the cenote. Adventurers seeking to visit this rare, untraveled location deep beneath the earth needed to swim a colossal distance of 50 meters underwater to reach it. On August 5th, 2019, Dmitry Chernov's plan was to attempt to reach this legendary air bell. The problem, in addition to this being illegal, was that it is an astronomically risky endeavor. To put it into perspective, reaching the air bell means holding your breath and swimming the length of an Olympic swimming pool. Only instead of swimming across, you have to swim down. And instead of swimming in daylight, you're swimming in the dark. It is the aquatic equivalent of trying to leap from one skyscraper to another while wearing a blindfold. It is tantalizingly possible, in theory, but the potential for disaster is tough to overstate. Swelling with determination and captivated by visions of what the underground chamber might be like to successfully discover, Chernov kept an eye on the rest of the people visiting the cenote as he took heavy, rhythmic breaths, filling his lungs with oxygen. Then, after one final breath, he slipped his head under the water and began to swim. The question of whether or not Chernov knew he was swimming in a restricted area, and to what extent he had to deliberately bypass safety measures, would later become a subject of legal debate in Mexico. It's clear that Chernov was trying to reach this fabled air bell and must have realized the risks involved, but it's also clear that the area wasn't properly blocked off. Meaning not only that Chernov wasn't stopped from his pursuit, but that he also may well have been underinformed. As the sounds of sun-soaked activity were suddenly muted, Dmitry Chernov inverted his body underwater and began swimming the breaststroke, propelling himself as steadily and as quickly as he could. For the average, healthy young adult to swim a distance of 50 meters while using the breaststroke, it might reasonably take about 60 seconds. Most adults can hold their breath for longer than that without passing out, but without training, it isn't necessarily easy, especially if you're swimming hard and expending tons of extra energy. Another complicating factor in Chernov's case was the fact he was swimming in a downward direction. Thanks to gravity, this would actually help increase the distance he would cover per second. However, this would have the reverse effect on the way back up, and would be particularly problematic if Chernov decided to bail and turn around halfway. Chernov continued to swim down into the poorly lit underwater world. He tried like hell to keep his mind focused without letting the rapidly depleting oxygen in his lungs cause him to panic. What happened next is hauntingly uncertain. Some sources, including the National Speleological Society, report that Dmitry Chernov did in fact reach an air bell some 50 meters below the surface. Other sources, including an anonymous source who was present at the scene of Chernov's rescue operation, say that Chernov did not find any air bell, seemingly implying that there is no air bell to find, and the whole thing is just a dangerous legend. What all sources seem to agree on is that after reaching the 50-meter point where he believed the air bell was, Chernov did something startling. He continued to swim even deeper into the cenote. The reason for this is a mind-bending one. Chernov was so deep underwater and so far away from sunlight that he could not figure out which way was up and which way was down. Whether he managed to reach the air bell, recover his breath, and eventually dip back underwater, or he simply never got a chance to breathe again, Chernov made the wrong choice and swam a ways in the wrong direction before getting caught. Here, alone, well over 100 feet below the surface of the Lu'um Balam cenote, he drowned. Attempts to recover the body of 31-year-old Dmitry Chernov proved difficult, to put it mildly. Rescue workers had to make several attempts, all trying to enter the underwater chamber the same way Chernov did, before realizing the only way to extract his body was by drilling holes in the bedrock. This would allow personnel to access Chernov's body from a different angle. However, it proved costly, time-consuming, and incredibly elaborate. First, a very precise and thorough survey had to be conducted in the low-visibility environment. Next, once workers had identified the exact spot where they needed to drill, bulldozers were called in to clear out a huge patch of the jungle. Once a pathway was cleared, no less than 20 truckloads of gravel were brought into the remote location to provide a road for the drilling rig to drive in on. Yes, they literally had to build a road in order to recover Dmitry Chernov. After flattening the rainforest, paving the road, and driving a 10-ton drilling rig to the area, it was only then that the real work could begin. Drilling a hole that was 36 inches wide, the massive drilling rig bore into the ground near the edge of the Umbalom cenote. It eventually drilled an astonishing distance of 26 feet before piercing through and creating a makeshift tunnel through which Chernov could be extracted. Chernov's body was finally removed from the Umbalom cenote on August 11th, nearly a week after he drowned. The news of Chernov's tragic and horrifying death quickly cast a dark spell over the remainder of that summer in Mexico's tropical paradise. Chernov wasn't the only tourist to die in the Yucatan Peninsula that summer either. The Yucatan Times reported later that August that a total of 9 tourists had died so far that season, though Chernov's was the only death unequivocally due to unnatural causes. Local authorities also came under fire for the fact that Chernov was able to access this supposedly off-limits area of the cenote. Local publications, such as the periodical Noti Caribe, said that the biopark might be held liable for Chernov's death. Today, the Umbalom Biopark is permanently closed. Amid tragedy, legal woes, and the rest, the fundamental mystery appears to remain unsolved. Is there an air bell underneath the Umbalom cenote or not? Perhaps the risks of finding out are simply too great, and now that the park is closed, we may never know for sure. It started as an ordinary day of adventure for 5 college friends exploring the scenic Stillhouse Cave in Alabama. None of them had any experience with caving, but the beauty of the area drew them in. As they walked near the entrance of the cave, one of the friends, Curtis Mills, ventured inside alone. Moments later, something went horribly wrong. A sudden sound echoed from deep within the cave, and what happened next would change everything. Stillhouse Cave in Alabama is a natural treasure located in the northeastern part of the state, a region known for its rich cave systems. Alabama is famous for its caves, especially in the Northeast, which is considered a quote-unquote hot spot for caving in the United States. The state's unique landscape, with its beds of carbonate rock, provides the perfect conditions for caves to form over time. This area is home to many caves, but Stillhouse Cave stands out as one of the most fascinating. It offers a glimpse into the underground world and the geological history of the region, making it an exciting destination for cave explorers and nature lovers alike. The cave is located in a beautiful setting surrounded by scenic natural features such as small streams, steep slopes, and wet weather springs. The surrounding area is part of the Duck River watershed, known for its rich biodiversity and stunning landscape. While exploring the Stillhouse Cave area, visitors can enjoy the peaceful sound of running water and the beauty of the nearby Stillhouse Hollow Falls, which cascades 75 feet down into a deep hollow below. The waterfall creates a picturesque scene that adds to the overall charm of the area. Inside Stillhouse Cave, the cool, damp environment supports unique cave formations like stalactites and stalagmites. These formations have been created over thousands of years by the slow dripping of mineral-rich water. The cave is also home to a variety of cave-dwelling animals, including bats, insects, and other small creatures adapted to life in the dark. The cave provides a glimpse into the delicate ecosystem that exists underground, where many species rely on the cave's constant temperature and humidity to survive. Exploring Stillhouse Cave offers visitors the opportunity to experience Alabama's natural beauty from a different perspective. The cave's impressive geological formations, combined with the lush surrounding landscape, make it a destination worth visiting for anyone interested in nature and adventure. Whether you're an experienced caver or simply someone looking to enjoy a peaceful day in nature, Stillhouse Cave provides a unique and memorable experience in the heart of Alabama's cave country. On May 4th, 1985, a group of 5 college students visited their fellow student John Graham at his home near Stevenson, Alabama. Like many young people, they were full of energy and eager to explore. The students had heard stories of a nearby natural wonder, a large horseshoe-shaped sinkhole with walls towering up to 50 feet high. The sinkhole was a scenic and popular spot with locals, and a stream flowed over the high side of the sinkhole, feeding into Stillhouse Cave. None of the students were experienced cavers, and none of them had any caving equipment, but that didn't dampen their sense of adventure. They were just excited to spend the day outdoors, discovering the natural beauty of the area. The cave wasn't far from John Graham's house, only about a quarter-mile walk through the woods. When they got there, the group excitedly talked about what they could see. Now, even though none of them had ever been inside Stillhouse Cave, they had heard that it was a relatively easy cave to explore. The cave's walk-in entrance was wide and welcoming, 15 feet across and 10 feet high. To them, it didn't seem like the kind of place that would pose any danger. Little did they know, the cave concealed a hidden peril just out of sight. The students arrived at the sinkhole at around 5:15 p.m. and scattered around the falls, taking in the stunning scenery. The air was cool and fresh, and the sound of the cascading water echoed through the sinkhole, creating a peaceful atmosphere. One of the students, Curtis Mills, who was in his early 20s, excused himself, saying that he needed to use the bathroom. Well, without giving it much thought, he walked down the side of the sinkhole and made his way into Stillhouse Cave. His friends didn't think much of it at first, as they were all busy enjoying the area in their own ways. A few minutes later, John Graham was standing near the entrance to the cave when he heard an unsettling sound, a loud slap coming from inside the cave. Concerned, he called out to Curtis, but there was no response. His voice echoed back at him from the cave's walls. Now, at first, Graham thought that Curtis might be playing a prank on them, trying to spook them by staying silent. But after calling a few more times and still getting no reply, his concern grew. Something didn't feel right. What none of the students realized was that just inside the entrance of Stillhouse Cave, the cave floor took a dangerous turn. The entrance may have been easy to walk into, but a short way inside, the path dropped off suddenly into a 30-foot free-fall pit. The cave's smooth streambed floor might have looked inviting, but it hid this deadly drop-off from view, especially as the natural light outside began to fade with the late afternoon. Realizing that something might be seriously wrong, Graham ran back to the house with one of his companions to grab a flashlight. When they returned and shone the light into the cave, their worst fears were realized. Curtis Mills was lying at the bottom of the pit, motionless and soaked by the spray of the waterfall. He was unconscious, and it was clear that he had suffered a serious fall. Graham's heart pounded as he raced back to the house to call for help. Within minutes, the Stevenson police were alerted, and soon, a full-scale rescue operation was underway. Several ambulances arrived on the scene, along with officers from different law enforcement agencies, members of the Scottsboro Fire Department, and the highly trained Sand Mountain Rescue Team. They knew that time was of the essence. Curtis was lying at the bottom of the pit, exposed to cold water, and his condition was rapidly deteriorating. The first paramedic reached Curtis at 7:10 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the initial accident. By this point, Curtis was severely hypothermic. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low, and he was unconscious, teetering on the edge between life and death. The paramedic quickly assessed his injuries. Curtis had suffered a fractured skull and an injured hand during the fall, but the most immediate threat to his life was the cold. His body temperature had plummeted to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, well below the normal 98.6 degrees, and if they didn't act fast, he wouldn't survive much longer. The rescue team worked quickly and efficiently. They carefully evacuated Curtis from the bottom of the pit and transported him to the waiting helicopter. By the time the helicopter lifted off, it was already getting dark, and the team knew that the clock was ticking. The helicopter flew Curtis to a hospital in Huntsville, where he arrived at 9:02 p.m. Doctors were already standing by, ready to begin life-saving treatment. Curtis was in critical condition, but thanks to the quick actions of the rescue team, he had a fighting chance. After being rescued from Stillhouse Cave, Curtis Mills was immediately treated for severe hypothermia. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low during the hours he spent at the bottom of the pit, exposed to the cold spray of the waterfall. Although the rescue team had saved his life, Curtis's recovery was far from over. His skull fracture and hand injury were serious. He was admitted to the neurological intensive care unit, where doctors closely monitored his condition. For 10 days, Curtis remained in the ICU as he began the slow process of healing from his injuries. His skull fracture and other wounds were serious, but the real concern was the potential damage to his brain due to the head injury and the hypothermia. After those critical 10 days, Curtis spent another 11 days in the hospital. Even though his condition was improving, it was clear that his recovery would take a long time. The fall had left him with lasting physical and mental challenges. During the summer, Curtis underwent intense physical therapy to help him regain his strength and coordination, as well as speech therapy to address the issues caused by his head injury. Despite the progress he made, the road to recovery was long and difficult. 6 months after the accident, Curtis was still not fully recovered. While he had made significant improvements, the trauma of the fall had lasting effects. One of the most unsettling aspects of the experience was that Curtis had no memory of the accident. He couldn't recall what had happened in the moments leading up to the fall, or how he had walked into the cave without noticing the dangerous drop. He had likely stepped over the edge without realizing what lay ahead. The excitement that had filled the group of college students earlier that day was replaced by a sobering realization of how quickly things could go wrong. None of them had been prepared for the dangers that Stillhouse Cave held. They hadn't thought to bring any caving equipment because they had assumed that the cave would be safe enough to explore on their own. It was a mistake that almost cost Curtis his life. The rescue team that saved Curtis's life was highly trained and well-equipped for these kinds of emergencies. Their quick response and expertise made all the difference in getting Curtis out of the cave alive. However, not all cave accidents end well. Many people who explore caves without the proper training or gear find themselves in situations that they can't escape from, and they can die. Curtis was very lucky to have survived such a serious accident. Many others who find themselves in similar situations aren't as lucky. His experience shows how dangerous caves can be, especially when you don't have the proper knowledge, equipment, or training. Curtis survived because of the quick response of his friends and the rescue team, but it also showed the importance of being careful and prepared when exploring nature.
The Lost River Cave sounds like a place from an Indiana Jones movie. It also looks like one. Let's face it, there aren't a whole lot of caves on this planet that you can explore on a boat, or that have been featured by Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's a unique place great for families to visit, but it also boasts a dramatic history and, on rare occasions, has even turned deadly. Lost River Cave is located in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Bowling Green is the third largest city in Kentucky, but the nearest big city to it is actually Nashville, Tennessee, since Bowling Green sits quite close to Kentucky's southern border. Aside from this cave, the biggest thing Bowling Green is probably known for is the National Corvette Museum. It's not really a place that draws millions of visitors every tourist season. The existence of Lost River Cave within its city limits is something of an anomaly. Most cities don't get to have such an unusual natural landmark just a few minutes away from the local shopping mall. The entrance to Lost River Cave, which is literally across the street from a Popeye's chicken restaurant, is among the largest cave entrances in the eastern United States. The cave itself is really a cave system, which stretches out for 7 miles underground. As the name suggests, the cave has a fairly wide river running through it. For a long time, the river was also thought to be insanely deep. When geologists first began trying to measure the depth of the water, they used something called a plumb bob, a small, pointed weight on the end of a string. Although I haven't read any direct accounts of this, there's a good chance that the first time they tried it, they ran out of string. They didn't need just a few feet of it, or even just a few dozen feet of it. To their surprise, geologists ended up needing hundreds of feet of string to measure the depth of the Lost River. After some adjustments to their string supply, they finally managed to get the plumb bob to hit what they thought was the bottom of the river, at an astonishing 437 feet below the surface. They were measuring at a section called the Blue Hole. Blue holes are essentially sinkholes, and they appear in other places around the world, such as the Bahamas and the South China Sea. The fact that there was a blue hole inside a cave in the middle of the US that appeared to be nearly 450 feet deep helped catapult Lost River Cave to international fame. In fact, this extraordinary depth was the main reason why Lost River Cave ended up being featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not. But, disappointingly, readers should have chosen not to believe this one. It was later discovered that these insane measurements were wildly inaccurate. But they were wildly inaccurate for an interesting reason. The blue hole in Lost River Cave actually connects to another river, one that runs underground. So, technically, the blue hole is only 16 feet deep. The Plum Bob was just getting swept underground, making it seem like it kept descending and descending. This was a clever trick by Lost River Cave. No one seemed to figure it out until long after it had become a famous tourist destination, and many are still on the fence about the true depth. This apparently includes the government of Kentucky, whose Energy and Environment Cabinet still says on its website that the blue hole's depth is supposedly 437 feet. No matter how deep it is, the blue hole is still an amazing feature of the cave, and it's not the only reason the cave is an amazing place to visit. Today, on a boat, it takes roughly a half hour to tour the whole cave, because that's how much there is to see and explore inside. The cave also has a fascinating history to learn about. People were storing food and using the cave for shelter as long as 10,000 years ago. Around the turn of the 19th century, a water mill was built here, and, for a long time, it was the only underground water mill in the United States. During the Civil War, Bowling Green was Kentucky's provisional capital as part of the Confederacy. During the Union Army takeover, Union soldiers used the cave as a camp, as many as 40,000 of them. According to local archaeologists, you can still see the names of Union soldiers carved into the walls. My favorite part of the Lost River Cave story is what happened during Prohibition. According to local legend, although this has never been proven, the cave was used by bootleggers to make alcohol illegally. After Prohibition, and this part we know for sure, the cave was turned into a nightclub. Yeah, no joke, a nightclub. The club hosted a number of famous musical acts, including the NBC Orchestra. Billboard described it as the only air-conditioned nightclub at the time because it was so naturally cool inside. For reasons that could only have to do with the general public being no fun, the club went out of style and closed in the 1960s. The cave went into a period of decline, filling with trash. It wasn't until the 1990s that an effort was made to refurbish the cave and open it for tourism. Paying to take a boat tour is generally the way most people experience Lost River Cave today. However, there are those who try and explore the cave alone. You're not supposed to do this. The property is privately owned, so you have to avoid getting caught just to get inside. Despite the obvious intrigue, I, of course, cannot recommend that anybody try this. Not only is it dangerous, it's also illegal. But I can tell you the story of what happened when one man tried to do it. His name was Danny L. Vaughn Jr. Danny grew up in Warren County, the same county where Bowling Green is. He was born in 1990 and spent 30 years of his life living near Lost River Cave before he seemingly decided enough was enough. He was going to try and explore the cave. I say this in speculation. As far as I've been able to uncover, nobody really knows for sure what Danny's motivation was. Danny reached the age of 30 during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Stores were closed, families were forced to stay home. Needless to say, tours of Lost River Cave were canceled indefinitely, and there was no way, at least no legal way, to get in. Danny had a daughter. He also had a decent-sized family full of siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins. There's no real way to know, but I think we can safely assume Danny's experience of COVID-19 was much like it was for most people. Stressful, tragic, highly disruptive, and after a while, full of boredom and restlessness. I guarantee you, Danny L. Vaughn Jr. is not the only person in Warren County who thought about sneaking into Lost River Cave during lockdown. What sets Danny apart is that it appears he went out and actually tried to do it. As I described earlier, one of the many things that makes Lost River Cave unique is its central location. As a matter of fact, it is right off the side of the highway. This poses both advantages and disadvantages for sneaking in. For a massive cave with a 7-mile river inside it, the place is remarkably easy to get to. You could even stop across the highway at Lost River Liquors and grab some beer on your way in. Being right next to the highway is also pretty ideal for making a quick getaway if needed. At the same time, being in such a central location means there are people around most of the time. Of course, due to COVID, there were no tours happening and the cave itself was empty. but the whole surrounding area wasn't. Danny may have planned meticulously for this, or he may have had no plan at all. None of us really have any idea. All we know is that there was at least one witness to the event. At around 6:30 p.m. on March 11, 2020, Danny L. Vaughn Jr. was seen climbing over the fence and entering Lost River Cave. The witness who saw him called the police immediately. Why they were so quick to call the authorities must have one of two possible explanations. The first is that the person called because they saw Danny fall into the water. This would explain why they were so quick to dial 911. They thought he had an accident and was probably hurt. The second explanation is that the person who called was simply calling because he was trespassing and they wanted to report it. This begs the question of whether Danny fell or not. Frustratingly, local news reports seem to conflict on this. The local NBC station reported that officials on the scene said Danny jumped over the fence and fell into the river. But the local ABC station quoted an officer named Tim Gray, who said, "We don't know if the individual jumped or fell from the fence, but we are aware of witnesses who did see him climb over the fence and did not see him resurface." Well, which is it? I've never been to Lost River Cave, but based on the multitude of photographs and video footage available online, I have not seen anything I would describe as a fence. There are certain sections inside the cave where there are railings, low metal beams along the river's edge. But there doesn't appear to be a fence that a witness from outside the cave could see Danny climbing over. But in May 2020, there might have been a temporary fence blocking entry to the cave, which had been shut down due to COVID just a month earlier. If I had to guess, that's probably what Danny climbed over and what the witness reported to the police. If that's true, it means Danny most likely didn't fall. He was just obviously sneaking in. What Danny got up to while he was in there is something we'll never know. The sad and mysterious ending to the story is that he somehow drowned in the river. If you frame the story like it was a madman who leapt over the fence, fell, and drowned, well, then it doesn't sound so peculiar. But if you dig a little deeper, as I think you and I have, we see that it probably wasn't that simple. Danny probably didn't fall. And if he had fallen, he wouldn't have landed in the water, because he was probably climbing over a temporary fence that was blocking the opening of the cave, which is a bit of a distance from where the river actually sits. But how did Danny drown? Most of the river is only 4 or 5 feet deep. Sure, it's supposedly possible to drown in an inch of water, but if you're a full-grown male with enough physical agility to leap over a fence, how likely is it that, sadly, like so many cases, with this, we simply don't have enough information? It's possible no one does.
In 1985, a group of divers set out to explore the mysterious depths of Cape Kinau Cave off the coast of Maui. Armed with excitement and curiosity, they descended into the dark, twisting passages beneath the ocean. But as they ventured deeper, the cave's beauty turned into a trap. Visibility disappeared, air supplies dwindled, and panic set in. What happened next would change the course of their dive forever. How did they manage to survive the chaos? Cape Kinau Cave is located within the fascinating Ahihi-Kinau Natural Area Reserve, a protected region established in 1973 on the southwest coast of Maui, Hawaii. The reserve covers 1,238 acres of land and 807 acres of ocean, stretching along 3 miles of Maui's rugged coastline. Known for its unique natural environment, the reserve includes a striking lava field created by the most recent volcanic activity on the island. The rocky, rough terrain is mainly composed of Pahoho lava, which originated from the Haleakala volcano's southwest rim zone. Cape Kinau Cave, hidden within this dramatic landscape, is a natural formation shaped by lava flows. The cave's location near the shoreline adds to its mysterious allure, as it sits amid the sharp and jagged volcanic rock that flows into the ocean. The coastal setting of the reserve offers more than just stunning views. It is home to thriving marine life, making it a popular spot for snorkeling and diving. However, beneath the surface, Cape Kinau Cave holds secrets of the volcanic past, preserved in the solidified lava walls that have formed over time. Moreover, to the cave, Ahihi-Kinau Natural Area Reserve also protects rare coral reef ecosystems and anchialine ponds, which are unique pools of water that are connected to the ocean underground. The reserve's importance lies in its mission to preserve the geological, cultural, and biological diversity of the area, making it a remarkable location for both explorers and scientists alike. On the morning of February 23, 1985, at 7:45 a.m., a group of divers gathered at Ed Robinson's dive boat on Maui Island, Hawaii. They were a mix of tourists, excited to experience the island's underwater wonders. The group consisted of John Baird, Tom Callan, Masao Nakan, and Preston Penny, who was 37 years old at the time. All four were certified in open water diving, but none of them had any formal training in cave diving, which requires a higher level of skill and preparation. They were excited for the adventure that lay ahead, not fully aware of the risks involved in cave diving. Ed Robinson, a seasoned dive instructor, led the group. He had explored Cape Kinau Cave before and was familiar with its layout. Along with him was his assistant, Sue, who would act as the safety diver for the day. The divers discussed their plan for the morning, and after considering a few options, they decided that their first dive would be at the cave located on Cape Kinau. The idea of diving into a cave thrilled the group, as it was something different from the open water dives that they had done before. The opportunity to explore the cave's hidden underwater tunnels and chambers filled them with excitement and anticipation. As part of their preparation, Robinson made sure that each diver had one underwater light. The light was crucial since caves are dark environments where visibility can drop to zero without proper lighting. However, having just one light per diver wasn't ideal for cave diving, where backup lights and redundancy are standard practice. In addition to the lights, Robinson had planned to record the dive, capturing the entire adventure on video. The divers were eager to document their experience, imagining the thrill of watching themselves navigating the cave's mysterious depths later on. Now, although the divers were not specifically trained for cave exploration, their enthusiasm was undeniable. They had a deep thirst for discovery, eager to explore the uncharted parts of Maui's underwater world. The prospect of venturing into a lava-formed cave surrounded by ancient volcanic rocks sparked their curiosity. For them, this dive wasn't just about seeing beautiful coral reefs or colorful fish. It was about experiencing something that few others ever had. The cave was a mystery, a place where natural forces had shaped an underwater labyrinth that only the brave could enter. Although they were excited, they were not prepared enough for this kind of dive. While Robinson had experience and knew the cave, the divers did not have the skills and equipment they usually needed for a safe cave exploration. Cave diving is a special type of diving that involves going through narrow, dark passages, sometimes with little space to move or turn around. Without proper training, it can quickly become dangerous. As they prepared to dive, the divers may not have fully understood the challenges ahead. Their minds were focused on the thrill of the adventure, not on the risks involved in exploring an underwater cave. Sue, the safety diver, would follow the group from behind, ensuring that everyone stayed together and no one strayed too far from the group. With their gear ready, lights checked, and the dive plan set, the group was ready to begin their exploration of Cape Kinau Cave. What lay ahead was an underwater world unlike anything they had ever seen. Beautiful, but potentially perilous. Cape Kinau Cave, as described by divers familiar with its layout, and by those who survived the dive, had a relatively simple structure. The cave consisted of one main passage, known as the Trunk Passage, which had entrances on both ends. This main passage was wide and long, making it the primary route through the cave. Along the Trunk Passage, there were 3 side chambers: the Small Chamber, Turtle Chamber, and Deep Chamber. These chambers provided additional areas to explore, but also increased the complexity of the dive. The depth of the cave varied, with the deepest part located in the Deep Chamber, which reached around 90 to 100 feet underwater. This made it a challenging spot for divers, especially those with cave diving experience. The Deep Chamber was accessed through a narrow, tight passage, which required precise movement and control. For inexperienced divers, navigating this area could become dangerous due to the limited space and the need for careful maneuvering. One end of the Trunk Passage was particularly spacious, allowing up to 6 divers to swim side by side. However, as divers progressed through the cave, they encountered a much tighter section that connected the Trunk Passage to the Deep Chamber. This area was very narrow, requiring divers to carefully squeeze through the opening. Beyond this point, the cave opened up again into the Deep Chamber, but the narrow passage posed a risk, especially for those unfamiliar with cave diving techniques. The floor of the cave was covered in fine silt, which could easily be disturbed by careless movement. If the divers kicked up the silt, it could cloud the water, severely reducing visibility and making it difficult to navigate the cave. In underwater caves like Cape Kinau, maintaining visibility is crucial, as losing sight of the exit or other divers can quickly lead to disorientation. There was also a small exit, known as the middle exit, located partway through the cave. Sunlight could be seen through this exit, but only when divers were directly below it. This exit provided a potential escape route, but it wasn't always easy to spot, especially in murky conditions. Beyond the middle exit, on the same side of the main passage, were the 3 chambers, all lined up in sequence. The small chamber, turtle chamber, and finally, the deep chamber. Each of these chambers added a layer of complexity to the dive. While they were interesting areas to explore, they also increased the risk of divers becoming lost or separated from the group. Without proper planning and communication, navigating through the chambers could lead to confusion, especially in the dim, confined spaces of the cave. The dive at Cape Kinau Cave began with careful preparation. But as the group descended into the depths, things quickly took a dangerous turn. All the divers were equipped with 80 cubic foot cylinders filled to 3,000 psi, a standard air supply for open water dives, but risky for cave diving, where extra air is often needed due to the challenging environment. Leading the group was Ed Robinson, a skilled diver who was also filming the dive. His assistant, Sue, stayed at the rear as a safety diver, making sure that no one fell behind. The plan was simple. They would enter the cave, explore the chambers, and stop at the middle exit for an air check. If anyone's air supply dropped below 1,500 psi, they would abort the dive and head back to the boat. This check was crucial because diving in a cave meant limited opportunities to surface for air. At the middle exit, the divers did their check, and everything seemed to be in order. All the divers still had more than 1,500 psi, so they decided to continue deeper into the cave. As they reached the deep chamber, the situation began to change. The chamber was the deepest part of the cave, with depths of up to 100 feet. The pressure here was higher, meaning that the divers were using more air at a faster rate. Tom Colan was the first to notice that something was wrong. Checking his gauge, he realized that he was down to 600 psi, much lower than expected. Nervously, he signaled to Robinson that he wanted to exit the cave. At the same time, John Baird checked his own air supply and saw that he too was at 600 psi. To make matters worse, visibility in the cave was deteriorating. The once clear water had become cloudy with silt, kicked up by the divers' movements, making it harder to see and navigate. Robinson quickly realized the danger they were in. With visibility dropping and 2 divers low on air, the priority was to get out as fast as possible. He led Colan and Baird toward the 3rd entrance, which was closest. The path to the exit was narrow, and the silt clouded everything, making it hard to see where they were going. As they swam, Colan's sonic alarm went off, a sign that his air supply was critically low. In a panic, he signaled to Robinson that he was out of air. Robinson acted fast, sharing his air with Colan as they continued to swim toward the surface. By the time they reached the surface, only Baird had any air left. Just 100 psi, barely enough to breathe. Meanwhile, the situation inside the deep chamber was growing worse. The silt in the water had turned visibility to almost zero. The divers could no longer see each other clearly. They could only make out the faint glow of the lights from the others. Sue, acting as the safety diver, realized that they needed to get out immediately. She signaled for the others to exit the chamber before it was too late. Masao Nakan managed to exit, but he struggled at the narrow restriction between the chambers. Preston Penny, however, was in more serious trouble. Penny, already struggling, had to be pushed through the tight passage by Sue, who was also fighting against the thick cloud of silt that had enveloped them. Once they had exited the deep chamber, Nakan and Sue headed toward the middle exit. They were able to get out of the cave, but something was wrong. Preston Penny had not surfaced with them. Robinson, now on the boat, quickly realized that a diver was missing. Without hesitation, he grabbed an extra air cylinder and dove back into the cave, determined to find Penny. The cave was now in chaos, with visibility almost completely gone, and the tight restrictions made it hard to move. Robinson searched through the silty water, feeling his way through the passages as he looked for Penny. After a few tense minutes, he found him, but Penny was unresponsive. Robinson brought him back to the surface as quickly as he could, but it was already too late. Despite efforts to revive him, Penny could not be resuscitated. He had drowned in the cave, likely overwhelmed by the lack of visibility and his dwindling air supply. The tragedy that unfolded in Cape Kinau Cave could have been prevented had the divers been more prepared and followed proper safety protocols. When Preston Penny was found at the bottom of the cave, he still had his camera in one hand and a light in the other, but his air tank was empty. His gear was in place, yet the lack of air meant that he could no longer survive in the depths. Even though the visibility in that part of the cave was good, it wasn't enough to save him. This tragic loss highlighted the many critical mistakes made by the diving team. They also had a bad plan for managing their air supply. They did not follow the simple rule of keeping 2/3 of their air supply for the return trip. By the time that they had checked their air at the middle exit, some divers were already using too much air. This put them in a dangerous situation as they went deeper into the cave. Without a rope to mark the way back, the divers were at risk of getting lost in the maze of passages, especially as it became harder to see. The lack of coordination between the team members also made it more dangerous. When things started to go wrong, it became clear that the group hadn't adequately prepared for such a situation. There was confusion, and decisions were made under pressure, increasing the risk for everyone involved. As Prosser, an expert in cave diving, pointed out after the incident, this was an accident waiting to happen. It was fortunate that the entire team didn't perish that day. The dive was filled with risks from the start, and these risks were compounded by the group's lack of experience and poor planning. One important lesson from this tragedy is the need to be extremely cautious when embarking on hazardous adventures, especially with people you don't know well. Each diver in the group had their own experience level and approach, and this lack of familiarity made it harder to work together as a team. In some cases, it may even be safer to tackle such challenges alone, where you are solely responsible for your own safety and decisions. In the end, the Cape Kinau Cave incident serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers that can come with cave diving. Proper training, preparation, and safety protocols are essential to ensuring a safe and successful dive. When these are overlooked, the consequences can be devastating, as seen in the loss of Preston Penny. As we conclude this tragic tale of the 1985 Cape Kinau cave diving incident, we are reminded of the harsh realities and dangers that lie beneath the surface. This story is an example of how lack of preparation and experience can lead to devastating consequences. Let this serve as a lesson to all explorers and adventurers. Safety, training, and proper planning must always come first.
In 1995, a group of 8 trained divers gathered in Tulum, Mexico for an exciting day of cave diving. They submerged below Tulum into the underwater caverns and traveled through the columns and walls of limestone. By the end of the day, only 5 divers would make it back to the surface alive. The peninsula of Yucatan, located in the southern region of Mexico, is home to over 6,000 cenotes, caves filled with crystal clear water. Because of its beauty and proximity to the Caribbean coast, they've become a major tourist destination, attracting divers from around the world, beginners and experienced alike. The name cenote comes from the Mayan language, meaning water well. These wells were considered vital and sacred to the Mayan people. They were a source of water, a source of life. The Mayans also used them as a portal to speak to the gods. In fact, the skeletal remains of over 120 people were found in one cenote alone, although it is unknown when and how they died. The cenotes connect to an underground cave system, a labyrinth of kilometers-long tunnels. All of these systems, at some point, connect to the sea. This provides the cenotes with a mix of both fresh water from rainfalls and salt water from the ocean. The zone in which fresh and salt water meet is known as a halocline. It creates a murky and dense blur that distorts a diver's view. Diving into the caverns of a cenote is what's known as cave diving. It's classified as an overhead environment dive, meaning there's structures above you. This differs from standard scuba diving or open water diving, in which all you need to do is travel up to surface. In overhead environment dives, you have to either go forward, go backward, or hope that there's a sliver of an air pocket in the case you run into trouble. It requires different types of equipment. This difference is what makes cave diving so dangerous, especially for those not trained in it. Once you begin your dive into the cenotes of Yucatan, you're given a choice. You can stay within the limits of the cavern lines, which are permanent rope guidelines, or you can travel further into the cave system. If you choose to travel beyond the main cavern limits, there is a chance you may not make it back to the surface. The summer of 1995 was a busy one for Maria and her husband Harry. Their dive shop in Cozumel, Mexican divers, had received several calls looking for a guided tour of the Yucatan cenotes. They began planning the logistics of such a tour. Though they were trained open water divers, Maria and Harry had no experience in cave diving. They decided to hire a guide, or dive master, local to the area they would explore, Tulum. They found Juan, an open water instructor. He agreed to take the group to two of his favorite cenotes that he was familiar with. With a tour guide in place and the diving location set, all that was left to do was wait. On August 17th, the group of 8 divers met at Grand Cenote, 5 kilometers north of the town of Tulum. Along with Harry, Maria, and Juan were 3 Dutch, an Italian, and an American woman. Though trained in open water, none were certified for cave diving. The divers strapped on their equipment, jumped into the open mouth of the cave's entrance, and traveled into the clear, blue waters below. The waters were warm and the depths relatively shallow. The group was filled with excitement. They were diving in such a place of beauty. This may have been the most beautiful dive they had been on their entire life. Juan had made this happen. They respected their dive master and placed their trust in him. After spending almost an hour at Grand Cenote, they were ready for their next dive. Just south of Grand Cenote was Cenote Calavera, or the Temple of Doom. The group piled out of their taxis and approached the entrance. In front of them was what looked like a giant skull, a large mouth-like entrance with 2 smaller holes behind. After a resupply and re-equip, they began. One by one, they jumped into the mouth of the skull and down into the water below. Looking back, they saw the sun shine through the openings, a beautiful sight underwater. A ladder, which looked like it had been put there by the Mayans themselves, was the only exit. Juan led the group of 8 through the main section of the cenote. Harry took up the rear. The main section is a large 360-degree area, a radius of around 366 meters. The floor reaches a depth of 14 meters. Many tourists and even experienced divers stay within the cavern limits, but Juan had other plans. As they traversed further into the caverns, they became surrounded by limestone walls and columns dripping from ceiling to floor. This was no open water dive. Juan led them further. They traveled into the Madonna Passage, a tunnel leading to the kilometers-long cave system. The tunnel was past the main caverns, past the guidelines, and past the sign. The sign reading, "Stop, prevent your death, go no further." They were not far into the passage when Harry, moved by panic or premonition, retreated back to the entrance. None of the other 7 noticed he was gone. Juan, despite his responsibility, never looked back. The further they went, the colder it got and the harder it became to see due to dwindling light and halocline interference. All the while, their oxygen supply was continually decreasing. The group continued swimming. They were beginning to panic, frightened by the diminishing oxygen, unsure if they were being led on an adventure or led to their death. After several minutes in the passage, Juan finally looked back at the group and noticed that only 3 divers were left with him. They were low on oxygen. He himself was low on oxygen. Harry waited at the entrance for his wife and the others. It seemed like hours had passed. Should he go back down? Then, a diver resurfaced. It was the Italian, then 2 more, Dutch divers, then a third, Juan. Without explaining, Juan took Harry's partially full tank and traveled back down to the passage. Every second mattered. He swam through the main cavern, through the columns and walls, arriving at the signs. At the entrance, he saw that the seconds no longer mattered. 2 divers out of air, 2 divers dead. There was no more hope for them. He knew there was one left. He traveled further down the passage, and between the walls he found them. The 3rd diver, it was Maria. She was out of air, but still alive. Harry was now outside the entrance, fearing that his wife was gone. He continued looking back at the ladder leading into the skull's mouth. Waiting. The minutes continued to pass by when the splash of a diver surfacing caused Harry to rush to the opening. Juan, the ladder, carrying Maria. She was not breathing. He quickly pulled off her equipment and began CPR. A vehicle arrived to rush Maria to the Red Cross station in Tulum. There was hope, but Juan was seconds too late for Maria, too. She was pronounced dead at the station. Juan retrieved the bodies of the other 2 divers, one of the Dutch tourists and the American woman. The death of 3 divers lay in the hands of an untrained dive master. Juan was never charged with a crime, though many believe his actions should be considered manslaughter. He took a group of divers into dangerous caverns without the proper equipment and without the proper training. The deaths led to pain and anger throughout the Yucatan Peninsula. Dive shop owners and instructors in Yucatan and Cozumel were outraged by the incompetence of Juan. How could he lead this group knowing he wasn't properly trained? They were moved to action. They formed an association to develop a list of safety policies and procedures for diving in the cenotes. Those policies have influenced the training and practices of instructors and shops throughout the area. This story is unfortunately not unique. So many divers have suffered the same fate underwater, especially in the cenotes of Yucatan, where divers, many untrained and inexperienced, continue to lose their lives to this day. The number 1 cause of death for cave diving is suffocation, which amounts to 2 things: improper gear and improper training. Without the right training, you can get lost and find yourself surrounded by the unknown walls and caverns underwater, becoming disoriented and never making it to the surface again.